Hey everybody, today, hit like and subscribe by the way. If you like knife reviews, we do a lot of them here on the channel. Occasionally we'll do some gun reviews. I'm gonna start ramping those back up a little bit and see if YouTube plays nice. They demonetized all my knife videos or my gun videos in the past and knocked out all my revenue. But I'm gonna maybe give it a go because that is where I made most of my money, and by that, I also mean that also not just about the money, but that I made the most money off of those because they were the most watched. So clearly people liked those. So I may try to get back to those. But today we are looking at two knives I got off Amazon. I paid 55 bucks for two knives. Let's see how good they are. I will be opening them with my new, the Tear Jerk by Rough Rider Reserve. Great little knife I got. Did a review last week. Nice little Warncliffe with a wicked sharp blade. And then it's got kind of more of a Barlow type. So I'm guessing this is a Barlow. I did a little research. It turns out Barlows are offered in two, it can be a 1 or 2 blade styles. So apparently this is a Barlow. So that's my only Barlow. Anyway, it's a nice little knife. So we're gonna go ahead and open up the zip package. Obviously both came from Amazons. Love the Amazons. So let us see what we've got. We've got one from a company. These are both made in China. This one is made in Hong Kong from a company called Firebird, or you might see Ganzo. Again, the knives coming out, the names are all weird, but most of the knives are really damn good. And then we've got yet another one from Eafengrow. Eafengrow is a company that has impressed the hell out of me. Now, a lot of their knives have been clones, so I've got a review that's got the Microtech COD or DO Death on Contact, DOC. And then there was another one of the Strider style knife. I think it's the SHM or something like that. This is, and I've got a couple of them that are not clones. So this one is not a clone to my knowledge. The model is the EF932. Let's see what it's all about. D2 steel. We'll go over the specs in a moment as I pull them up on my screen here. So this is going to be more of that cleaver style that's gotten popular, like the Kaisers, the Kaiser Sheepdog. My other Kaiser that I've got is the Towser K, which is a great, great knife. And so this is going to be similar to that. So the specs on it real quick, you can get it in a black G10 handle as well as tan as well as jade. Let's see, the blade thickness is pretty beefy, 3.5 millimeters, weighs 5.46 ounces. The blade length is just over 3 inches at 3.14. Overall is 7.36. So not a really big knife, at least not lengthwise. It's more of a short stubby. It's a little bit thick in the handle. We'll compare it to the Towser. So the Towser is a bit longer, a bit thinner, maybe a little more EDC friendly because it is thinner. It'll just sit in your pocket a little nicer. This one's definitely a bit thicker and brawnier, and it actually weighs more. So from a hard use perspective, I feel like this guy might be just a little bit more brawny. It is running on, I believe this one is ball bearings. Let's see, does it say in the specs? Should somewhere. It could be brown, it could be phosphor bronze washers, or it could be bearings. Not sure. There's no play whatsoever, so I'm going to go ahead and say that that's probably ceramic ball bearings. Detent is strong, won't flick open on its own, but this operates as a flipper. And it's a nice low profile one. It doesn't have any jimping, but it's nice and round and smooth, and it's just enough to get that kicked open. The blade is fairly heavy, so it's not quite as snappy as that one. This thing is just, I mean, the bearings on that, it's really, really slick. This one might break in. The blade's a little shorter. The detent's a little stronger, so I'm not sure how that'll, well, it does kind of go on its own. It's just a little bit of a assist from gravity. Edge feels plenty sharp. We'll get our Amazon package. Yeah. And that's kind of heavy or thick paper, almost like cardboardy kind of it's packing material. It's actually multiple layers, but it certainly seems quite sharp. Let's go look at the blade centering. To scooch off. Not enough that I would go, oh, it's got a problem. It's, you know, probably just that detent, that liner lock pushing against the blade. But it's a tiny bit off center. I'd say it's like, instead of 50-50, it's like 55-45. So it's close. To me, it's acceptable. As long as there's a noticeable gap and there's no chance of it rubbing and marking it up at all, I'm fine with that. Fits in the hand, pretty nice. You feel a tiny bit of a hot, I mean, it's not a hot spot, but you can feel that. Luckily, it falls in a part of the hand where your hand is naturally, you know, your hand isn't flat when you hold something. When you're gripping something, it curls, it's concave. So it does kind of fit in there. So you feel it, but it's not really pushing in on me. No jimping. Thumb studs and flipper. D2 steel. It's stone washed here. And then it's a little more brushed satin on there. The swedge is also stone washed. So kind of a neat sort of a contrasty kind of look. Fits in the hand well. You could just get a full grip on it. It is thicker, so I would say the Towser is slimmer and lighter. So maybe a little more, like I said before, a little more EDC friendly. Action's certainly a little nicer, but this was a $70 knife versus a $25 knife. $24.99 to be exact. And this is 154 cm steel versus, you know, so this, the Kaiser's definitely the better knife. And it's got jimping and some things like that. But for 25 bucks, you got G10. Pocket clip is deep carry. It is not reversible, so it is tip up right hand only. It's a little beefier and thicker, but it's a nice little knife. I definitely like it. I do appreciate the cleavers. They're very strong knives. The tips, you know, you may change your angle a little bit so that instead of pushing in, you know, that way you kind of change your angle. They are still quite stabby, but they're not going to be as stabby as, you know, a Sebenza style clone or a Spyderco PM2. Obviously, those are going to be a bit more stabby, but they do have some belly. They're definitely hard use knives. They're very good at slicing and using that tip for like a draw cut and things like that. So it's definitely cool. For a quick size comparison, let's throw it up here against the PM2, throw it up against the Land 912, throw it up against the Kaiser, and I just happen to have this one on my desk, so the Columbia River M16. So it's actually on the smaller size. I would say the handle is a bit thick, but it's still just a wee bit shorter than most of these other ones. The one it's probably closest in size to is that Sebenza clone from, who's that from? San Renmu or Land? I forget what, you know, whatever name they're using. It's all the same company. So it's right in there. It's a little bit thicker. It's probably the thickest out of all of these, honestly. It's definitely the thickest handle. But that should make a nice, good little, that's a good little knife. It's not too big. That's the thing with like the Kaiser. If you get the sheepdog, the regular sheepdog, like the blade was like a nice size, although it was really tall, so it was a little cumbersome, but the handle was just a little too small and narrow for me. This fills the hand out. I would say between the two, which feels better? That is a tough call. I kind of prefer the little bit thinner here, but I think that if I was actually getting down to do some really hard work, if I was out in the woods and I was having to carve or cut or do a bunch of stuff, I feel like the handle's not any longer, but it just being thicker, I feel like I've got a little more to hang on to. I will say the only spot that I feel could be improved is if you look at this angle, I wish that that piece had been continued a little bit more. See how this arc, and then it stops and goes straight. That pushes, that pushes that edge up against that knuckle. Now, I can adjust my grip and push my finger down in there to where there's just a little bit of a gap. But when you just grab it instinctively like that, that edge is pushing up against my knuckle a little bit. Now, could I fix that? Yes, because that is the bottom edge. That is not the edge that, so if I take away any material, that is not the edge that I would be using for the flipper. So I could go down to my belt sander or just take my Dremel or even just take a hand file. I could take this apart, take the blade off, and just basically re-radius that corner. That's the only thing so far I'm noticing grabbing it. The size is nice. It's a little more small and discreet, even though it is a little bit thicker and heavier. But this is a strong knife. I mean, you've got G10, but also look at the size of those steel slabs. That knife doesn't flex at all. This is a very robust little knife. So great for like a utility knife, throw it in the tackle box. For 25 bucks, great buy. Flipper or thumb stud. On this, I mean, the thumb stud works really well. I like the little finger stop there. I just feel like that corner needs to be re-radiused for my hands. You may pick it up and have smaller hands and smaller fingers where your hand fits more down in there and there's a gap and it doesn't bug you. I think that if I was sitting here doing a bunch of work with it for a while, I think that corner pushing into that knuckle would create a hot spot and would become uncomfortable and it would be red and irritated after a while. But that is an easy fix. Unlike the one I had the other day, I don't remember which one it was, but it had the black, oh, the Scoria, had the black coated blade, and I was thinking, like, oh, it opens so nicely from the thumb stud. I don't really need the whatchamacallit, the flipper, you know. In fact, it just looks like it would look better without it aesthetically. But because it was a black DLC coated blade, if I ground that off, then I'd have that area of the blade exposed and open to corrosion, and it just wouldn't look right. It would look like you ground something off. On this, because it's just a satin brushed finish, I could radius that and fix that if it gets to the point. So if I use this, I'll carry this for a while and try it out. If it actually does bother my knuckle, I could take this down and just hit that on the belt sander for about 30 seconds and just take about, if I cover it up with my nail, I could take off about that much like that and just have that arc kind of come that way. And that would make all the difference in the world. Removing about 2 millimeters of material off that corner is all it needs. I could put that on the belt sander like that and just grind that nubbin off. So very cool. Overall, the Kaiser's better. I like their bearing system is much smoother. That thing is just like butter. I like the fact that it's got the jimping. It's just, and it's 154 cm. You know, it's a better steel. So for $25, I give that an absolute, you know, for in that price range, buy it. It's definitely cool. If you want to spend a little more and get a knife that's just a little nicer aesthetically, not radically, this is a good looking knife. But if you want a knife that is a considerably better steel and just that little bit nicer, then I would say go for the Kaiser. But this is cool. So, all right, we don't need this on here. Let's got to free up some room. We'll leave the PM2 out there. We'll leave these two little cleaver style knives out. And let's go to the next one we're going to review. Instead of doing two videos, let's do them both in one. All right, we have the model FH31 CF. That is the carbon fiber handle. The specs on this little guy are, wait for it, D2 steel, carbon fiber on the handle. Let's see, what are the specs on the blade? Do they bother to even give it? Nah, it's Amazon. Why would they? All right, well, in any case, let's open it up and see what we got. It's a good size. Yeah, it's a good size. I thought it was going to be a littler knife. It's okay. It's always nice when you get that surprise when something's bigger than you thought. Am I right? All right, so what do we have? We do have some jimping. We got some carbon fiber. Let's do some measurements. I don't see it anywhere. Comes with a nice little carry pouch. Comes with silica, you know, whatever. This guy was $26.95, so $1.94 more than the other one. The blade on this looks to be about 3.5 with a cutting edge of just over 3 inches. It's that sheepfoot or Warncliffe design. Kind of cool in that it's got that swedge on the back. Goes down to a, ooh, oh boy. That is a very pointy blade. Let's see. Okay, so here, this is what I'm talking about. See how the arc of that curve is continued. It doesn't go and then straight up. So when I grab that, it's curling away from my fingers. I do feel a little bit of a burr. You might even hear that. So there's kind of a sharpish edge. Not that it could cut you, but I'm probably going to take a piece of sandpaper to that and just round that just a little bit. Everything else, let's see, we got jimping on the handle, but it's not, they put the jimping here, but that's not really where you want it. I mean, you could choke up on it because this actually has a small finger choil. That's at least as good for the first knuckle. I've still got a gap in there, so that's okay. But the jimping should be up here. If you're choking up on it, that's where you want the jimping. I'm kind of scratching my head at why they did that. This one, again, that edge right there, great if you were using that for striking a fire striker, but I'm going to take a little file and just radius that a tiny bit. They could have done a better job there. It's very lightweight. This knife feels like it's probably around the 3 ounce or so range. It is flipper only. It is ball bearings, no blade play. Lockup is really good. The detent, fairly strong there on that. It's a liner lock. Not going to come undone on its own. This is comfortable, very light jimping, won't chew up your finger. Opens pretty snappy. That's a nice little knife. The pocket clip is reversible, so there's a plug on this side. So it does sit recessed a little bit, and that way you got your 2 bolts there, but you don't want it to wiggle back and forth. Tension, oh, we forgot to check the tension over here. Right where I want it. That is great. So back to the Eafengrow, that's the tension I want. Normally these things come so tight, and it chews the shit out of your pocket, and I tend to bend them out. That is exactly, if I were to bend it out, that's where I would bend it. Same thing here. It's strong enough, it's deep carry. That little lip doesn't angle up towards you. So there's no hot spot there. This fits the hand really nice. This is a cool little blade. The carbon fiber is well executed. The edges are beveled. So there's no rough edges here. Really, all I'm gonna have to do is just take a little bit and you say, oh, you gotta take a knife and modify it. Well, it's a $26 knife made in China, but it's D2 steel. It's a nice design, should be a good cutter. The back spacer is nice. It feels like it's carbon fiber as well, or some kind of polymer, but that is actual like carbon fiber. That's a cool little knife. I like that as well. So I guess that also falls, maybe not in the cleaver design, but it's certainly closer in design to that than it is to some of these others. So one I really want to find is, I need to find one of these, but with the all metal handle. That looks a bit more like the Sebenza. So it's the actual frame lock, not the liner lock. But I can't find any in stock. It's the Land Model 912. They seem to be out of them. I found some that looked, but they had like the 8CR MOV 14, whatever, the lower end steel. If I wanted at least in D2 or Sandvik. So if you know of anybody that's selling the Land 912 new with the Sandvik steel or D2 or something better, but it's the all metal, stainless with the frame lock, I'd love to get my hands on one of those. But not bad. This is the first Ganzo, Firebird, whatever. The logo's there. I'm kind of like, whatever about the logo. Minimal branding over here. Just says made by Ganzo. D2 PH31, the model number. You can get these in G10 as well. I think they're just a couple bucks cheaper. That's really nice. There's traction here. There's traction there. Your finger locks in good. My only complaint is just that it's a little bit sharp, that edge. But we're going to fix that as soon as the camera goes off. That'll take me all of 3 minutes with a little diamond rod. All in all, not bad. $55. And that's, again, I know people like, the American-made knives and want the Microtech and all that. Yeah, great. I got all that stuff. I have good higher-end knives that are, $300-400 and stuff. But sometimes you just want a pocket knife. And Amazon has got a ton of these Chinese companies. They may be the same company. They may be in the same factory. I don't know. But $25 buys you a lot of knives. If you buy a $25 Gerber, it's going to feel like a gas station knife. There is a big difference between U.S. companies that just outsource to China and they take designs that used to be made in the U.S. and they move them to China. Yeah, those are always a letdown. The companies that are actually Chinese companies that are cranking out knives, and they're maybe, in this case, maybe not that case, but in these cases, their own designs, they tend to be excellent knives. The materials are good. The fit and finish is excellent. This $70 knife, if this was made in the U.S. by Benchmade, would be $150 to $200. That's the reality of it. Or you can get the same quality and go to China. We can have the debate about China and the politics and, like China, whatever, then don't buy from China. Some of us don't have that prejudice and realize, hey, as long as you're not buying counterfeit or, whatever, but they make a good product. So both of these knives, I would give these both thumbs up. The only ding would be, I think I'm going to radius that edge away from me so it fits my hand just a little better. If I didn't have a 1X or 2X or whatever my glove size and I was just a large hand, I don't think this would be an issue. If you got smaller hands, I don't think you would even notice that. This is me being nitpicky and because I've got big mitts. But I can fix that in minutes. Same thing here. Other than that, for 25 bucks each, basically. 2 knives for 50 bucks plus whatever the sales tax was. It came to 55 bucks for 2 really cool knives. So check them out. I'll put the links in the descriptions. If you got any questions or thoughts, you know what to do. Throw them in the comments.